Welcome to another episode of Natalia Benson, the podcast, the Saturn Series. This is episode 3 of 3. And let me just tell you, it has been so special creating this series for you. If you have sent me a DM or left a comment on the YouTube or a rating or a review, I want to say thank you so much. In the deepest transparency, this was not an easy series to allow myself to do. As I've mentioned, and if you're just tuning in at episode 3 of this mini-series, I would suggest going back first and listening to episode 1 and 2, just so you can get the full context. But of course, if you're just here for the personal finance, the habits, the self-discipline, all the Capricornian, Saturnian things, then you're in the perfect place. But here's what I'll say. What I realize, and this has been true throughout my life, throughout my career, throughout my process and my journey of just deciding to listen to the thing that makes the least sense. I've had seasons in my work, in my life, most specifically in this career and in this business, and really in this mission more than anything, where when I've done the thing that makes the most quote unquote sense, I feel just a bit disillusioned and empty. And truth be told, that is why I had to take a break, because I just felt like I was getting so formulaic in everything that I was doing, even though the astrology is from my heart, the money work, the business, the entrepreneurship, all of this stuff, 100% from my heart and from a place of service. However, it was getting deeply formulaic, like I should be doing this. I should be like teaching in this way. Like other people do this with their podcast, or other people like have success with this type of like expression. I should do that too. And if there's one thing I've recognized throughout my work and just my growth as a person, it's that when I'm in the shoulds, that is when everything just goes off the rails. And so the reason I just give this little caveat is because I have to say, by being willing to trust this, even though I have very little idea where this expression of my work is going to lead, it just feels so right. And I can tell when I feel activated and something's important for me to do. It's just a certain feeling. I felt that with this series, and I felt that with bringing forward my work as a medium, my deeper work and my deeper relationship to death and grief and just the deeper sides of life. Because the truth is, like, I think about my astrology, my Neptune, Uranus. I have Ceres, which is an asteroid, all in the 12th house. I might even have some other things going on in there, but that's all I can think of at the moment. And what I will say is that the deeper sides of life and sort of the line between the here and the hereafter, and even intense situations, are really where I come alive. And I'm just going to I'm off-roading from my Notion notes for a second, but I remember I was in a relationship in my 20s. It was actually with another Aries, and we just I think it only lasted about a month, but I remember when we were together, we didn't really have a ton to connect on. I think we were both pretty brokenhearted from previous relationship that we had been in, separate relationships that we had been in. We met, we sort of like came together quickly. And then all I remember is just it going off the rails very, very fast, because we didn't really have any kind of foundation. So that can happen when you get two maybe hurting, immature, Mars-ruled people together. And I will never forget, we didn't have a ton to connect on. We were both into music. I was becoming a DJ. He was really involved with music. And I remember there was a time we actually got in a fight, and he went out. We were living in LA, and he basically he had like a scooter or something at the time, or like a some kind of motorbike. It wasn't a motorcycle, but something similar. And he actually tipped over in the middle of an intersection and almost got hit. And I remember he came home, he was all like bruised and stuff, and he was so shaken up. And we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, that could have been horrific. Like if we had just fought and that was it, I mean, holy moly. And I'll never forget, he allowed me to do what I do best, which is to like go into the depth with him. And I had him like lay down on our floor, and I did some energy work on him and just a bunch of clearing and grounding and just very intuitive work. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, this is you seeing the best side of me, because the other parts of me that he was experiencing were just my very hurt human parts. Like, I was also very young. I was probably about 26 or 27 when this relationship went on. But the reason I share this is because that was a little light bulb moment for me. I was just about to begin my Saturn return as well, but I just remember being like, wow, these deeper sides of life where someone's ego is sort of set aside, I can meet them here. And I have a strong ego. I think I was even listening back to an episode and I was saying how I don't like shallow conversation. I absolutely am capable of all kinds of shallowness and all kinds of depth, as many of us are multifaceted. We're never just one thing or the other. But what I recognize is where I'm happiest and where I feel the most authentic is when I'm in the depth and when I'm past the ego and into truth, and there's not a bunch of fanfare. All of this to say, this is how this podcast feels to me. And truth be told, my angels, this is what I want to bring it back to. So I wasn't going to talk about this till the very, very end, but I am planning on bringing this back. I'm not going to say anything else because I got to take a little bit of time and figure out a few things. But let's just have a little moment where perhaps 2025 we come back together and it's going to be powerful and it's going to be real and it's going to be deep and it's going to be esoteric AF. Maybe that should be my next book. My first book was mystical AF. Maybe my next book should be esoteric AF. That's actually, you heard it here first. I usually don't talk about my ideas. That's why I don't want to tell you anything else about the potty, because by potty, I mean podcast. I think my Aussie babes say potty. I love when they say potty. So anyways, any hoodle doodle, I'm going to get back to my Notion notes. This is what keeps me in a good flow with the episode. So welcome to the third episode of the Saturn series. I want to talk all about personal finance, smart habits, and self-discipline. I'm a Capricorn ascendant. And speaking of the chapter of my life where I was like very, very chaotic and very in my immature Aries right before my Saturn return, holy pie, I am amazed at 10 years later where I've guided my life. And truth be told, it is really from the authentic integration of having a Capricorn ascendant. Because here's the thing, when you are, if you're watching the YouTube, as I'm like adjusting my seat, we're recording in the living room today and we're just like exploring if this works. So if you're over with me on the YouTube, you can see me fixing my pillow. So anyhow, very simply, I have a Capricorn ascendant. I'm an Aries sun. Those two things create a square because Aries is cardinal fire, whereas Capricorn is cardinal earth. So that creates what's known as a square aspect in astrology. Very, very challenging to reconcile, but once you can reconcile it, it is like your power place. That's why when people get really tripped up about having square aspects in their chart, oppositions in their chart, and they see that as like a big gosh darn problem, I'm like, honey bunny, that is not a problem. Like that's how you unfold your superpower, truly. And what I will say is in the last 10 years specifically, really from the start of my Saturn return to right now, I'm in what's known as a Saturn square, which I will talk about at the end of the episode. But what I'll say that's so, so special is learning how to integrate and allow Saturn, the ruler of my chart, to really empower who I am. I remember in college, I had a very short space of time. I was probably about 18, about to turn 19 years old. And I remember I was like very, very disciplined. I was like going to the gym, doing really well in school. I had gotten out of another unhealthy relationship. Unhealthy relationships is my whole past. I'm sure I've talked about it on this podcast, but my lesson, especially when I was younger, up until meeting Mick and getting married, was always in being involved in unhealthy relationships. So the reason I speak into this is because you can see a very, very clear delineation between who you are before your Saturn return versus who you are after, because your Saturn return is there to support your maturation and to draw a line in the sand of who you have been versus who you are meant to become. But it's not always easy. It's like a little bit, Saturn is like a bit of a karmic check-in where it's like, are you going to show up for your life or not? Are you going to do the things and master the areas of your life that you very simply haven't figured out yet as a soul, or are you going to take the comfortable road? And so for me, I remember being in college and like doing really, really well and having this season. It was actually the exact same year that I started my first business, which was a jewelry line. I had it for 7 years, had Tyra Banks buy a piece for me. That was really incredible. I was in Fred Siegel in LA. Like I really, really worked my butt off doing that. I also was terrified of success and terrified of numbers. So it was very hard to run a business with those things sort of working under the surface. But that age of 19, which, oh man, I should have looked at this before. I guess I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but that age of 19, I believe that's a nodal. Is that a nodal return? Let me just check real quick. This is kind of cool to understand. Yes. Incredible. So between the ages of 18 and 19, you have a nodal return. Yes. Sometimes I get confused of what's a nodal return and what's a nodal opposition, like the ages. So around the age of 19, that was when I was just really getting things together. And that was when I stepped into being an entrepreneur. And so ironically, I'm an Aries and my North Node is in Aries. So that call to do something for myself, that really woke up in me at that time. But the reason I'm bringing this forward for you is because when I look back at that time of my life, I was starting to get very organized, very grounded, sort of leaving behind my deeply chaotic Aries self. But what sort of happened is that all the ways that I function now, that I exist within, which is like deeply financially organized, very disciplined, healthy habits. This doesn't mean I'm perfect, but it means that, let's say 90% of the time, over a long period of time, I've built really, really healthy, self-accountable, self-aware habits that help me live a great life. But this all really started when I was about the age of 19. I started to also get a glimmer of this Capricornian, Saturnian side of myself, where I would set myself weekly goals, weekly things to do to take care of myself, to move my dreams forward. But I'll never forget when I first heard the voice of self-sabotage that was like, this is too good to be true. I still hear it. I just don't listen to it anymore. But it's like, this is too good to be true. Like, you're not enough to experience this. Because basically what ended up happening is after the age of 19, started the business, was in an incredible place with my health. I was making money doing my first business, not a ton, but I was making money in college, which was awesome because I had a plan. I wanted to be in that business as soon as I got out of college. So I really, really wanted that. So I was working for that really all of college and building that business, which was the jewelry line. and I eventually moved to Los Angeles. If you guys ever want me to do an episode about that, that could be fun, especially talking about all the things I did wrong and quote unquote failing spectacularly. That's a good one. I could definitely talk about that. But what I will say that's so fascinating is that's when I first heard that voice. That's like, this is too good to be true. Don't write down your goals for the week. Nope. Start eating like this. Don't, move as much. Like, get into another relationship that, like, it was sort of like my comfort zone. But the glimmer that I captured around that nodal return, which would have also been making an aspect to my Capricorn ascendant, was really this part of me that was like, oh my God, I am deeply organized. I am deeply accountable. Like, there is so much that I am capable of doing. But that voice and that self-sabotage and that fear of the unknown was much stronger. So I share this because does this sound familiar for any of you, especially when it comes to your relationship to like doing what is truly good for you? I've been posting a lot about Saturn over on the Instagram, and it's really bringing forward a lot of very interesting conversation. And for many of you, it's also beautiful just to see how you already have like a healthy relationship to your Saturn placement. And talking about this and giving that remembrance and that reminder to anyone who fears their Saturn placement or fears their Saturn return, whether it's their first, their second, or their third Saturn return, it's really quite powerful just to see where people's relationships are to Saturnian energy, because en masse, many people typically, and I'd say in like stereotypical astrology, there really comes forward this fear. But if you're afraid of Saturn, you are afraid of your own untapped power and potential, because Saturn is the gateway to get there. And everything I'm going to chat with you about today around the personal finance, habits, discipline, I just am going to move away from shying away from using the word discipline, because the truth is, like, this is something I spoke about recently inside of MWMM, but we literally get to make peace with that word. I know when I was younger, the word discipline meant you were in trouble, but ironically, it's sort of the hijacking of a really, really important word, because discipline is sacred and discipline is devotional. And when motivation fails you, discipline won't. That's a reel I've been seeing lately, and my Capricorn rising is like obsessed. I'm like, oh my gosh, where motivation fails you, discipline won't, because you won't always be motivated to do the things that are great for you, whether it's taking better care of your money or showing up for your health and vitality. So you'll remember from episode 1 of this series, I said that my dad's invitation to you would likely be to take care and pay attention to your money. It's time to stop avoiding our finances. It's time to stop avoiding the things that challenge us. We've got to go straight in. Keep in mind, you have one life to live as you. Remember that stat I gave you, babes, about the 4 million, like every 4 million years is when your exact astrology will come up again. Like, you are so remarkably sacred. You are one of one, baby. Like, money is a key. Money is important. Financial well-being is important, whatever way you go about it. But take care of this part of your life, because as it exists at this moment in time, money is important and financial well-being is important. And in the tarot, money and health and the body and career and vocation are all the exact same suit, the disc's suit. It's the suit of earth. It's the element of earth. And there are so many similarities between taking care of your financial well-being as well as your physical well-being. It's pretty uncanny. We're going to talk about some of it today. So I and also my angels, can we just like level the playing field right now? There is no shame in anything that I'm sharing with you. I only want this to be empowering, but I have to tell you, in the most powerful moments when I'm teaching inside of MWMM, inside of my money membership, and inside of my work, it is always when I get to remind you that avoidance and resistance are literally, like, I think I've shared this quote before, but I believe it's a Chinese proverb that says, do what is easy, live a hard life. Do what is hard, live an easy life. And it's true, like eating healthy is not always easy. It doesn't mean you need to be 100 out of 100 all the time eating healthy. It doesn't mean that you need to be the perfect person with your money. It doesn't mean that you need to 7 days, 24/7 be immaculate with your habits. But I invite you right in this moment to take a look at any area of your life where you feel like it just isn't working for you right now, or it's not in the zone or in the space that you want it to be. Your wishes are not fulfilled. Your desires are not being met. There feels like there's just some sort of gap and it doesn't feel good, and you're willing to acknowledge it. Then very simply, all you need to make a change is to literally pay attention to it and to develop new habits. I'm going to chat a little bit about my dad, and I'm going to share actually a very deeply personal story. And I really hope my family's okay with this. So we'll see. They're used to me being like this, but I just want to say this one more time. You have one life to live as you. Money is a key. Your habits are a key. And Saturnian energy, which is rooted in all of these things, is very, very important. And we have got to stop resisting what is hard or what challenges us. It's there for a reason. And the mountain is you. I believe that's a Brianna West book. And it's also my favorite. I'm really into sports documentaries. I don't know if you babes know this about me. Oh my God, the light went off again. All right, we'll give that to who was that this time? I don't know. We'll find out. But I will say that with this sports documentary, it's a golf documentary. I believe it's called Full Swing. I found this song in it. I'm not going to look it up right now because I don't want to get too off on a tangent. But there's a line in it says, basically, I'll just share because I don't remember the exact lyric. But the idea is that the mountain that seems like it's before you, that seems like you can't get over it, that's the mountain that you are meant to climb. Because in the scene that they're talking about, I think his name is Bryce Kapka or something. He's a golfer. In the first season, he was just down and out. And I remember watching it being like, God, I feel so bad for this guy. Like to have a Netflix documentary filmed about you and you are literally having the worst season of your career and you're hurt and all this stuff, but he got to work and he was doing his healing and whatever it is that golfers do. This is also a shout out to my dad because he's a major, loved golf. Bruce Koepka? I don't know. Anyways, maybe some of you know who I'm talking about. But very simply, in the next season of Full Swing, it's so powerful because he just comes out, no pun intended, swinging. Like he wins and he's healed and it's just really powerful. And they played this song and I literally was like, my goodness, this song could not have been any more poignant for how it is to come back from defeat or to come back from challenge or to come back from like, oh my God, the pits of despair. And I think sometimes, and I'll say this just from my own experience, we see the challenges or the things that feel totally insurmountable. We see those things as like a doomsday death sentence. I know, especially in my life when money was so hard to figure out and I just felt like I was never ever going to get it. Well, that was the mountain that was there for me to climb. Like that was the mountain. And then on the other side of that mountain was my entire career. I share this because look around your life, because if you're having a problem, understand that that is Saturnian energy active in your life, there to support you embracing your potential. Because in order to have the money, the health and vitality, the relationship, the marriage, the career, the friendships, every single thing will ask something of you. And your habits, your relationship with yourself, your relationship to your own self-awareness and doing what is hard, even when you don't want to do it, that is actually what makes it possible for you to create the manifestations and the visions and the joy and the power that is inherent already in your life. But very often, when we just see problems as inconveniences instead of opportunities, we miss the entire point. So I hope this episode supports you in this. And I also, you guys, I want to hear from you. Like when I record these episodes, it's literally me speaking into a microphone. And I love to hear from you. Like, how does this land in your life? Like, does it give you a new perspective? Is it something you agree with or that hasn't rang true in your life? And I really speak this and I get excited to talk about an episode like this one, because the truth is, like, no new year is going to change your life ever. No new year, no new outfit, no new whatever. It's always about the way that you are relating to yourself every single time. This is the last piece I want to really anchor with this. It is most of all about how you handle and who you become in order to handle the things that you've asked for. I remember when I was so single in LA, never could find a guy to like be with me and commit to me and have a relationship with. I remember I did the work. I did a lot of deep healing. I know I have plenty of episodes where I've talked about this process before I met Mick. And one thing that I'll say, and then the work isn't over, by the way. Anyone who's married is like, yes, I'm aware, but it's joyous work, truly, even when it's so hard and you're just being challenged to your core. But what I will say is that there was a time in my life, whether it was with finances or with relationships or with my health, where I just wanted it easy. And what Saturn energy will say and share and gift to you is that you have to become the kind of person who can handle and take care and be responsible, response-able for the things that you have asked. So that's why so often, if we just get like a windfall of money, or I don't even know, I'm not going to go into too many examples because I just think there's so many directions this could go. But when things come too easy, have we actually learned or had the gratitude or the capacity to truly handle and hold the identity of someone who can take care of what it is that we've been given? And that's why so often when things come too easily, it doesn't mean that life needs to be hard all the time, but think about the things you've struggled with and that you've overcome, the mountains that you've climbed. You've got to the peak and then you can walk downhill till you get to the next mountain. There is a gratification in seeing the peak of that mountain and then like walking down it because you already had to walk up it. And there's some sort of like power in that that is just so remarkably undeniable. And I hope you know what I'm talking about. I do feel like there's something within this that's universal, because if you want money, you have to know how to take care of money. If you want health and vitality and a successful career or business, you have to be someone who knows how to take care and be responsible in that area of your life. The same with a relationship and even friendships to a degree, having like healthy, connected relationships. And so here's what I will say. I want to actually speak into a couple things that I forgot to talk about in previous episodes. But one thing that I just want to really remind you is just to make peace with discipline. And I'm going to say this one more time. Like, no new year is going to change your life. You are going to change your life, and you will utilize time, which is a Saturnian theme. You will utilize time to do this. You will utilize the time that you have on this earth to do this. Now, I want to share something with you. And again, I don't know if this might be just like way too deep, but let's give it a go. So very simply, I recognize something in both my dad and my grandpa. So my dad was a CFO, CPA, numbers guy through and through. My grandpa was an entrepreneur, and this is my mom's dad. long story, very, very short, they actually did not get along at all. They did towards like the end of my grandpa's life. My grandpa passed away when I was in high school. So my grandpa was a Cancer. My dad was a Scorpio. My grandpa had a business. My dad worked for my grandpa for a little while. And we'll just say very, very simply, it did not go very well. You know, working, if anyone's ever worked with family or knows someone who's worked with family, it definitely can take a bit to really, really get it to work and to come from it from a healthy place. So here's what's sort of interesting and powerful. And I want to like guide a lesson from this because it's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. So my grandpa worked his entire life. He actually was from Detroit. My grandparents, I guess this would be my great grandparents, were Ukrainian immigrants. And there was about 5 boys, no money. My grandpa's dad died when he was very young. So it all fell onto my great grandmother. I believe her name was Rose. And so my grandpa grew up very, very helter-skelter, but he went away to the Navy and then he eventually started a business that he owned in Arizona. He worked his entire life, got that business to a very, very healthy place, very successful place, and he retired. Not long after he retired, he passed away from prostate cancer. My dad worked his entire life. I told you guys a little bit about his story. His CPA, CFO. A CPA is a certified public accountant. A CFO is a chief financial officer. So this is someone who, especially a CFO, is like the numbers person and the strategy and just the whole numerical reality of the business. And they're very, very important. So my dad, I think he liked his career, but it was also quite stressful. And he worked for a company in Arizona. He worked there for 40 years. And then he and my mom actually retired very, very early. And they went on and had like quite a bit of a retirement. But my dad and quite a bit of time together retired before my dad passed away. But one thing I will say, and this is sort of how I began on this whole journey of my journey with finances, is because when I was younger, my dad stressed me out so much. He had so much fear around money. And through, I just think the piece of getting older and just gaining more perspective as you get to the final chapter of your life, which is, let's say, your older years, whether you're going to live 10 more years, 20 more years, 30 more years. As Tony Robbins says, there's more road behind you than there is in front of you. And you start to get some context. And basically, my dad had a conversation with my mom and he was like, Paula, I feel peaceful. I feel stable. I feel like at ease with our finances. Like I'm just grateful to be where we are. And then he died a year later. So I'm sharing this because I want you to have the revelation of stability, of your own version of success and joy of your life far beyond the end of your life. And this doesn't mean we're going YOLO. This doesn't mean like spend it all and who cares. This means that we find a healthy, sacred moderation, which is another Saturnian theme between taking care of our life for the future and enjoying our life in the now. Because if there's one thing I really witnessed about both my dad and my grandpa, and I go a bit deeper into my grandpa's story in my first book, in Mystical AF, there's one thing I notice about both of them. And obviously this is generational. This is the times, it's easy for me to sit in this space that I'm in right now and have a perspective because hindsight is always 2020. But it is very powerful to sort of witness this theme between my grandpa and my dad. And ironically that they didn't get along very well, but to see how at the end they sort of had a similar experience. And what it spoke to me is how important it is to not only take care of your life, but to also enjoy your life, because you can just go on and on and on and not feel like you are truly living. And I also understand that this is a very nuanced conversation, and there's no way that I can share a perspective that fits like a shoe that can fit every single foot, so to speak. But the perspective that I've gained from this is like, and that I want to share is how can we find that sacred dance between taking care of our life for the future and also enjoying and loving our life in the now. And sometimes it's the doing the hard thing in the now that creates the joy that you will experience in the future. And sometimes it's saying no to yourself, whether it be to overworking or to not applying yourself enough. You have to decide through your own self-awareness which side of the spectrum you're on, and ultimately also what you want for your life. Because if there's one thing that I teach, it's that success, and what a gift, what a privilege, what an opportunity, that success gets to be self-defined. So ask yourself, because Saturn rules success. It rules longevity of success. Ask yourself right now, just while we're in this conversation together, what success means to you. It's different for everyone. Most times I find that the women that I work with, it's that success means some semblance of freedom, especially freedom of time. And if there's one thing that helps us have healthier freedom of time, it's not because you have unlimited resources. It's because you have mastery over your relationship to your resources. And in astrology, this is covered in the second house of earned resources and the eighth house, which is the more emotional, intangible resources that you didn't so much earn, but they come through a more mythic type of manner. There's a lot of different ways that the eighth house money shows up. It can be inheritances. It can be in investments. It can be taxes. It can be these sort of intangible. Money has two sides. Money has the Taurian side, which is that which is known, that which is three-dimensional and seen and understood and follows a formula. And then money has a scorpionic side, which is that which is intangible, that which is mythic and emotional, that which is secretive. Most everyone has everyone, and just to use the pun of the coin, everyone has two sides of money. They have the formulaic, that which is seen, that which is earned, that which is strategized, that which is understood on a conscious level. And then they have the underside of the coin, which all that is scorpionic, that which is secretive, that which is mythic, that which is inherited around money, whether it be actual inheritance or just emotionally inherited. And another reason I'm so in love with astrology and I'm fascinated by it, because if you look to your second house access and your eighth house access, so second house, eighth house, you can find this in your natal chart, and you look at the zodiac sign or signs that are traversing. This is something I teach in MWMM. I'm going to talk about that at the end. But very simply, if you look at those zodiac signs that are traversing those houses, you can see both your conscious and your unconscious relationship to money and finances. You can see how to be abundant and responsible and formulaic and strategic so that you can create a success, whatever that means to you. And you will also see where you sabotage, where you get stuck, where you get into the subconscious weeds of money, because that's the eighth house. So this is really fascinating stuff to explore. And it feels important because, as I was mentioning, like when I was in college and I had this whole deeper relationship to my habits and I was doing really well, but then I backpedaled, and I've done that so many times in my life because I hadn't got to that eighth house. The eighth house are the subconscious roots of why I felt unworthy. And we could even go as so far as to say that your second house shows where you feel worthy or how you can activate worth. And your eighth house can reveal where unconsciously you feel unworthy and where you get caught in the subconscious weeds, so to speak. So these are important because yes, habits, yes, smart personal finance, yes, discipline, but we also have to remember that we are multifaceted, complex, powerful beings, and we're not one-sided. This is another reason astrology is so powerful, because it does not look at you two-dimensionally. It looks at you and your blueprint and the way that it accentuates your personality. Even if you have empty houses, they're still active. Like your whole birth chart is alive, whether there's planets there or not. Your whole birth chart is like a living, breathing ecosystem. And I will say, if you've been looking for a space to do deeper money work, to learn astrology, to learn your finances, to truly draw a line in the sand of past you with money to future you with money, who takes care of money, who has healthy habits, and who's building and creating and ready to receive for her future, that is what MWMM is all about. And I'll throw this in really quick. I wasn't going to talk about it till the end, but this is a good little segue. If you are curious about what it's like to work with me, how I teach money astrology, and also just how I function as a mentor and as a money mentor and an astrologer, then joining me for the 3-day Saturn series could be amazing. I always do my invitations for, like, if I have an offer that's tied to a masterclass, I always do it at the very end. It's completely optional, but I always like you to have the option to come into a proven, successful, I like to call it a success recipe, where you can actually learn and bring to life these concepts into your life and really, really move the needle. And I shared that beautiful story about my dad, about the 401k stuff and, the work that I do with women and money. And I have to tell you, in the deepest transparency, and this is something I've learned about myself over the years, but I just finally realized I cannot just teach astrology. I love astrology, but for me, the reason I teach astrology is because of personal finance. Like, I have a saying, and I actually talk about this in the Saturn Masterclass, like astrology in and of itself, it will give you self-awareness, but it is not here to save your life. Like, you are here to take care of your life. You are here to save, quote unquote, save your life. And no one is going to step in. I mean, I guess they could. There's, again, lots of nuance to this, but from my lived experience and how I teach, no one is coming to save us when it comes to our relationship to having a healthy, responsible relationship to our money and a healthy relationship to our habits. Like, you can have mentors. You can have, like, I have my trainer. Her name is Haven. She's really helping me go up and just move to a whole other level with the way that I relate to my health and my body. And I have that accountability, but she can't lift the weights for me. She's going to get the benefit. I've got to show up to the gym. I've got to do the program that she set forth for me. That's what I was talking about with the tarot, how we can see how these things all fuse together, especially with like personal finance and our health and well-being, because no one can come and like lift the weights for you or do your money date for you or whatever it may be. So with all of that being said, I would love to work more deeply with you, my loves. I think also from this series, you are getting a really, really powerful taste of why I do this work. And I wanted to really honor my dad, especially in the first 2 episodes, because all of his just, when I was younger, he was a bit hard on me because he couldn't understand why I didn't just get money. And the truth is, MWMM exists and my work exists because I had never found anyone who could explain money to me in a way that made sense. And to have a softening, it was almost just like, are you dumb? Like, I mean, my dad, of course, never said that, but that's how I felt in the world. It's just like, are you stupid? You don't get this? Like, I don't get how you don't get this. And finally, it took me a lot of time, but I had to find my own soft approach that was balanced in both the active masculine and the receptive feminine, the soul, as well as the tactical. I call it the practical tactical and the emotional energetic, because I think for many of us, and I think if you're drawn to my work, there's a reason why, because there is an integration of both sides. It's not just one-sided. And yeah, this is all so important. And I think as I'm getting older and I'm in this Saturn square this year, it is so deeply like anchoring my relationship to my Saturn, not only my Capricorn ascendant, but also the Saturn placement in my chart and just Saturnian energy in general, that if we apply ourselves and if we show up for the things that are hard in our lives, we can make them better. We just need to focus on them. We just need to get real, which is Saturn. We just need to get real about what's working and then either find the mentor or the book or the habit or the process or, like I said, the success recipe to help give us a new tool or a new approach to an area of our life that we're not great at naturally. And I am not naturally great at money. I am not naturally great with exercise and responsibility in these areas. Absolutely not. I've had to find people and tools and new approaches that took me beyond my sort of easy street mentality. Like, oh, well, if this isn't easy for me, then it must not be meant for me. And I think that gets touted a lot in our culture, that it's like, if you're not a prodigy at something, then you shouldn't do it. And not to say, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that. I've thought that many times, like even just watching like shows where I'm like, okay, there's this person or this child who's naturally deeply good at something. And it's powerful and it's inspiring to see. But I wonder if at a unconscious level, collectively, it's like, well, unless you're prodigal at something, then you just shouldn't do it. It's like, we all have to go through, if you want to do something that you're not naturally good at, you just have to learn how to do it. And going back to that mountain analogy, when you conquer it, you're just going to feel so unstoppable. So let me see what else I want to speak into. I learned a bit about the Saturn square this year, and something that I find very, very powerful, because I was like, what the heck is going on this year? Like, I had the mold. IVF didn't work for us the first time. I lost my dad. My dad was sick all year. It just was like the waves just kept on coming. And there is an astrologer. I'm actually going to look her up really quick so I can share her handle. I just happened to be on Reels one day. Let me find her. Yes, her name is Arwa. Her handle is Arwali5. So ARWALI5. Arwa. She does astrology and astrocartography. So one day I'm just cruising around on Reels and I see this post that she did, because I'm very fascinated about astrology and timelines. Like that stuff just, man, I think that's the coolest thing. And Chani Nichols actually has a blog post that I refer to often. This is really what piqued my interest, because I think many of us, we hear about Saturn returns, but do you know about all the like magnificent planetary squares, oppositions, returns that you're having throughout your life? And the thing that just totally I geeked out about is like, oh my God, wowzer powzers. Like when we look at like traditional things that people say in culture, like a midlife crisis, that actually corresponds to the Chiron return. So it's just interesting when you see things kind of like in popular culture, and then you see how the astrology and the universal experiences that we all move through, of course, in our own unique ways, when you see how that also corresponds to the movement of the planets in our lives, to me, that is exquisite. And so Arwa had a post where she was talking about like all the different Saturn transits, and it said age 37, 38 is, or 36, 37, I don't remember, but it was basically like Saturn square. And of course, being an astrologer and just seeing the word Saturn and square, I talked about squares a little bit earlier. I was like, holy moly, that's crazy, because I kept asking like, what is going on? And I just never really paid much attention to Saturn squares. I am a very experiential astrologer. Just an experiential person in general, being an Aries. And so I like to live through things, really metabolize them, and then teach them. I'm not so much like a left brain studier just to like get in all this information for no reason. I typically will be drawn to things because of something that's going on in my life. And that's the way I teach astrology. And it may be simple to some, but I don't care. I want astrology to be useful, especially with a Cap ascendant. If it's not useful, why are we utilizing it? It's like, it's here to help us be more self-aware and, of course, live an effective, impactful incarnation. And when we complicate it, that's why sometimes when I teach and you sweet boo-boos want to ask me all these like extra questions, I'm just like, unless it's going to help you really deeply use astrology in this very moment, I'm not going to answer it. So if you've ever learned with me and you've noticed that, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. So basically the Saturn square at 27 has just been another opportunity to mature. But like I said, and I talked about this, especially in episode 2, with everything that's gone on with my dad this year, with the molds, like the mold exposure, holy moly. Maybe one day I'll do a whole episode about that. I have a remarkable naturopath. Her name's Dr. Sarah. She's been on the show before a couple of years ago. But very simply, like the amount of Saturnian tools I've had to tap into this year to just take care of my life and not go off the deep end is freaking incredible. Because especially when you get mold exposure and also like having my dad be sick, these were just all things that it was like, again, the going gets tough and you got to get going. And that's really what this year has taught me, is that Saturnian energy and the asks of Saturn in our life, it can either feel like we're crumbling and our life is falling apart, or it can feel like we are rising to the occasion because we are becoming the kind of person who can handle challenging things. Like Glennon Doyle says, we can do hard things, and it's true. So I want to just throw in a couple things, like actually a few things that I didn't get to share with you that I felt were very, very magical about my dad's passing and just going in the flow of conversation. But this episode felt important to share, especially at the end of this series, because I don't want to just talk about Saturn energy in a vacuum. I want you to relate to your money, to your habits, to your day-to-day life, because I want you to be someone who creates the life that you truly want. And you're not just like responding and reacting and riding the waves of what you're handed and thinking that something's wrong because it isn't easy. I want you to be someone who's intentional and really applies yourself with your life. And I think maybe it's bold for me to say, but I think you would be drawn to my work because you are that kind of being. And you're here to lead your life. So remember to RSVP for the 3-day Saturn series. I would love to have you. I will make sure that we have the RSVP link at the very, very top of the show notes, both in the YouTube as well as the actual podcast. So I want to go ahead and close with just some more really powerful things that occurred with my dad's passing. And I was literally at the gym this morning and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't talk about this because it was so special. The day before my dad passed away, I was standing in our kitchen. And if you heard the previous episodes, I was supposed to fly out that night, but I ended up moving my flight to the next morning. And what was really powerful, very intense, is I was standing in my kitchen and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but words were being sung through me. And I was all of a sudden singing Country Road, Take Me Home. And I was belting it, literally belting it. And all of a sudden, I felt this pit in my stomach because I was like, why am I singing Country Road, Take Me Home? Like, who even sings that? Like, what is going on? And I just remember having this feeling of like, I don't really like that I'm singing that, but it was also kind of joyous and beautiful that I was singing like Country Road. I won't do that to you guys, but it's John Denver, by the way. But one thing that I will say is very powerful is the day that my dad passed, I spoke to my therapist again that night. She's just been there for me through everything. Shout out Dina. Love you lots. She's so amazing. So I was talking to Dina and I literally said, Dina, the day before my dad died, I was singing Country Road, Take Me Home, like belting it in Mick and I's kitchen. She goes, oh, John Denver. And I go, what? I go, that was one of my dad's favorite artists, like John Denver, Gordon Lightfoot. Who else? Linda Ronstadt, Sting. These are just things. He used to make like mixed CDs and mixed tapes that we would listen to when we'd drive up to Flagstaff. When we lived in Arizona and we'd go to Flagstaff for the weekend. So there's another John Denver song. Let me see. I actually made a really beautiful playlist for my dad. I've had to take a break a little bit because, the crying. I'm grateful to have just a little bit of respite from the crying, but it comes and goes. But there's a really, really beautiful song by, where is it? Oh man. Oh yes. It's Wild Montana Skies by John Denver and Emmylou Harris. Oh my God. Like whether you love like folk rock or not, there is something just magnificent about that song. So when Dina told me John Denver, I literally fell out of my chair because I was like, okay, that's soul energy. And as I mentioned to you, babes, before, I know that there were many moments where my dad was more liminal and he was coming through to just start to, I think, warn me a little bit. I didn't even tell you guys about the dreams that I had. I thought I did, but I didn't. That'll be for another episode, another time. We'll have plenty of time together. Don't I know it? But I just want to say, my angels, thank you so much. It is so my personality where we would go so deep esoteric in episode 2, and then we would bring it right back down into the groundedness and into the power of our body, our being, and our habits. Because I'll tell you what, especially really tapping into my ability and what I'm learning to allow as a medium, oh my gosh, the amount of groundedness that it requires is everything. And I really feel so passionate about this in my work and in everything that I do, because what we are is etheric, non-physical beings. Like we are our souls. But when we come here to have a continuity of consciousness that's incorporated with the physical self, with the things of earth, with money, with challenge, with pain, with beauty, with love, with hate. We literally come to experience all of it, to integrate it, to transmute it, to serve, to love, to be good to each other. But you got to be grounded and rooted in your physical form in order to do that. And I mentioned doing one of my best friend, Krista Williams, her body reclamation course, Metamorphosis. Highly, highly recommend it. I think she has another cohort happening soon. After I did that course with her, my mediumship tapped on like a whole other level, because I was no longer disassociating and hating my body essentially. And that's really also been the tip that I've been on ever since, is taking care of my physical form on like a whole other level. And that is informing and supporting my spiritual work, my psychic ability, all my clairs, because you have to be available and attuned to what is going on. And I know when I told you, angels, that story where I like to call it the wall of love, but when I experienced that wall of love, when I was walking on my walking pad, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's in episode 2, I believe, of the Saturn series. But I mean, that would never have occurred had I not been more attuned and available to my physical body and mediumship and my psychic abilities. They have all just healed and expanded in such a profound way because of the relationship that I have to my healthy habits, my healthy finances, my healthy body. My angels, we are here. Like, remember, if there's something that isn't working, it just is requiring your attention, your love, and your willingness to be patient and apply yourself. And you can transform anything. And one thing that I will say, and I'll give you a little idea of kind of where we're moving right now. But I feel like I've moved the last couple of years of really teaching the finances and the business and all the ways that spiritual, heart-led women can stabilize their lives. And now I'm really excited, especially where I'm going to move with the podcast, is just to now integrate. So kind of like these episodes where episode 2, we were in like deep esoteric world, my favorite. And then this episode, we went into like deep accountability, a very loving, gracious reality check, healthy relationship, discipline, habits, our money. Integrating and finding the common ground between those two things is exactly where we're going, but we're going deep esoteric, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm going to just trust the process, and I really hope to have you along on the journey. And it feels good to say that because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I feel like where I was before, I was very much in my left brain, very much in like a formula of shoulds. And I needed a little bit of space and time just to zoom out and really make a decision as to where the universe and my guides and my team, my loving ancestors, my higher wisdom, my soul's plan, where is it guiding me and how can I be a tool? And I don't have all of those answers, but I do know that everything that I've expressed through this series is absolutely on the money, no pun intended, of what is so important to me and what I perhaps just needed a little bit of time and space to myself to metabolize and then to be able to express. So I'm very excited to see where this goes. And I would just love to hear from you again in the DMs, my honeys. It means everything. How did this land? Do you have a great relationship to healthy discipline and habits and your finances, or do you not? And no matter where you land on that spectrum, please come and have fun with me. LOL, Saturn fun. Yes, we're going to have such a beautiful time at this 3-day series, the Saturn Plan and Prep, getting you ready for 2025. We're going to be focusing on mastering our mornings, caring for our money so we can make more of it, and stabilizing our businesses. And of course, we'll bring in the esoteric, we'll bring in the astrology. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's happening October 22nd through the 24th. And as I mentioned, that is a beautiful segue to get you ready to join me for MWMM if you would like to do this deeper financial astrological work with me moving into the beginning of the year. And I want you just to think for a second before we go, what is something that you just really want? Like, you know, in the sacred opportunity that you have of being you, that this is something you want to experience. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and I want you to like tap into that. What do you want in your life? And I love you. I don't want you to be like, oh, I want freedom. I know that's beautiful. We want that. I want you to actually think of the experience, the tangible experience that you want to have, whether it's, I want to own my own home and be able to homestead and have a garden and feed my community. I want to, let me think, what's something I'm excited about? I guess that's one of them. That's one of them. I want you to actually think. I don't want to share too much because I want you to like feel into your heart. I want to have $200,000 in my bank account so that I can shop whenever I want. I can contribute to causes that mean something to me, that I can travel and do any kind of work that I want. I want you, I'm going to be quiet. I just want you to think, what do you want? Like, what would you deeply like to experience in this life, whether it be in the realm of finances, health, your career, a relationship, a marriage? Okay, now I'm going to be quiet. Just take a moment and let yourself acknowledge a desire that your soul has for your life. Okay, what if I told you that a healthy relationship to money A healthy relationship to your habits and your self-discipline is exactly what it will take to create that. And you could even say, well, Natalia, I said that I want to have an incredible, lively, spiritual, connected marriage. Well, there is nothing that comes up in a marriage more than a healthy relationship to money, whether it's healthy or not. So the rooting to these three Saturnian things, finance, habits, and discipline, what if these were the keys that actually help bring to life whatever it is that you're desiring or whatever it is that you really want? So I cannot wait to hear how this lands with you. Definitely explored quite a few things here, but I'm so excited to hear just how this feels, how this lands. Any takeaways you have from this episode, please DM me at Natalia_Benson. Otherwise, if you're watching on the YouTube, please comment below. I love to read. I love to see how these things land with you. Make sure to RSVP and grab your space. If it's any time between October 22nd, 2024, make sure to grab your space for the Saturn Plan and Prep Masterclass. I'm so excited to see you babes live, to learn together live. Thank you for tuning into this series. I am so excited for what I am possibly cooking up next for the podcast. But all I will say is that this isn't the end. I love you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for showing up for who you are here to be. Thank you for being willing to do this work. And thank you, as always, for tuning in and for your ear and for your time. What a privilege. What an opportunity. I love you. I'm proud of you. I see you, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.